some time-saving tips for your upcoming job interviews. And let's start with the phone screening rounds. Okay, for a phone screening round, you don't need an entire story bank to prepare, right? The expectation is that your answers will sound perfectly polished, right? You're not expected to remember every single detail of your most important achievements, but rather, to give some answers that will help clarify about your fit for the role. And therefore, if you don't need a story bank, then it means that you could prepare on lists of the most commonly asked questions. Okay, to give a very simple list here would be, tell me about yourself. Okay, by far the most commonly asked interview question. Then if you have a great tell me about yourself, chances are that will also include the why do you want to work for this company, or your motivation, which is the second most commonly asked question in job interviews. So one shortcut here would be you prepare a great elevator pitch, and that will include your motivation to join that company as well. The third most commonly asked type of question in job interviews is walk me through one of your projects. Okay, or walk me through your resume. So basically the expectation is you would have some highlights that would be the most interesting to share, to sell yourself on, so to speak, for the job description you're applying for, right? Number 4 here would be something along how do you handle tough deadlines or stressful situations. Okay, so how do you handle stress, so to speak? So you would have to think about the situation where, it was not straightforward to progress. Okay, the 5th question I would recommend you prepare for phone screening rounds is how do you handle conflict? Are you easy to work with, or tell me about a recent conflict inside your team? Okay, also there's a good probability you might get asked these types of questions. And number 6, why did you leave your last role? Why are you leaving? Or if you were recently laid off, you must also prepare yourself to answer this question. I also covered this at length in other videos. Last but not least, are you also interviewing elsewhere? Okay, because believe it or not, best candidates will almost always interview in multiple places. Okay, so basically for a phone screening round, the expectation is you would prepare on these. The expectation isn't your answers will sound perfect, but you would deliver something ideally with good level of clarity. Okay, the second thing I like to talk about here when it comes to interview prep shortcuts is that 2 heads are better than 1. Okay, so getting help for your upcoming job interview will significantly improve your chances to get through stuff a lot quicker. For example, if you do a role play session, you could hear some feedback from someone. It could be an interview coach, but it could be also your friend. You could hear from them, hey, you know what, I like this one, I didn't like that. And you could also self-assess, to prioritize where is your time best invested in the process, right? So getting help is also a major shortcut in job interviews. Some people are simply too busy to prepare these job interviews, so they hire someone to help them. Okay. The third thing I'd like to talk about here would be in the context of preparing a final interview. Okay, so you've probably heard that the best way to prepare a final interview would be to have a story bank. Okay, the best prepared candidates always have their story banks that they could pick stories from and to answer pretty much any interview question, right? Now, a shortcut when it comes to preparing a story bank, if you remember what I talked about in the beginning about the phone screening rounds, where I recommended to prepare the most commonly asked questions with tell me about yourself and why this company to begin with, preparing a story bank, simply deprioritizing your tell me about yourself, that is to prepare your tell me about yourself after preparing on some key behaviors, would save you a lot of time, simply because if you prepare your story bank at first, the stories around ambiguity, stories around conflict, stories around vision and strategic thinking, stories around learnings, failure stories, and that kind of stuff. Once you have those stories, ideally also revise them at least 3 times, it will become very evident and very simple for you to build your tell me about yourself and why this company, why this role, and your motivation, these types of more generic types of questions. So reversing your prep for a story bank would save you time. Okay, so another major way you'd save time preparing your story bank, and I'm referring to people who can already speak pretty well, for senior types of role, would be instead of making brain dumps of your stories, I don't know, 2 or 3 pages in some cases, you would want to keep them as bullet points. Okay, so if communication is a strength you have, then maybe no need to make brain dumps of your stories, but keep them as bullet points. Whether you do it in the star format or another format, that's up to you, but the simple fact that you use these bullet points will save you a great amount of time. Okay, and the last but certainly not least, as seeing more and more people building story banks on my website and working with candidates for various roles, I see some time sinks. So what I would what I would recommend you to avoid while seriously preparing job interviews, AI reworded answers are an excellent way to burn time. Okay, for job interviews included. So I was actually surprised how people spend hours on end asking AI to provide them feedback on their own answers, then rewarding their own answers using AI, which are no longer their answers, and stuff like that. Another very common way that people waste time preparing for the job interviews would be waiting for directions from their recruiter. So you send your recruiter a point of contact if you want, hey, what should I prepare for a job interview? And then you will wait for 3 days, basically do nothing, because you say, hey, but I have not yet received word from my recruiter on what to prepare for my job interview. And maybe one more here is that many candidates assume that, or rather prefer, to only start actually preparing their job interviews or preparing seriously for a job interview once they pass a screening round. Whereas in my experience, once you pass a screening round, once you get your final interview scheduled, you're on a deadline. And when you have a deadline, basically you're bidding that, hey, within 5 days or within 10 days, you are able to build a story bank. In my experience, this is rarely the case. And this is one of the most common regrets that candidates have, that they wish they had more time to start this story building process, so to speak. So don't be constrained about various milestones, so to speak, on your journey, because if you want to get good with interviews, if you want to thoroughly prepare these interviews, the best moment to start is now. So I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.